All right, well, it's time to do some more low-quality streaming. And I'm probably not going to get plastered tonight. So the drink of choice is this extremely high-end Rolling Rock in a can, just because that's the first thing I got my hands on. I'm probably not going to be as funny tonight. I'm going to try to do a better job than that stinking 4-hour disaster of a stream. We'll see how it goes. We're responding to another Innuendo Studios video about the alt-right playbook. I think I've got a better idea for the formula that this follows, so we'll find out. Let's see what we're in for here. Ready to go? Oh, sorry about the audio. Can't do much about it. I'm in a corner, literally. You can see the corner, right? Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Oh God! Already need a beer. No, it's not.
Say, for the sake of argument, you got this friend. You know that one friend?
Yeah. Okay. The friend. All right. Here's the formula. Innuendo Studios, Ian Danskin, sets up a straw man at the beginning of the video. Now, what he's going to do, first of all, look, see how angry, the angry eyes, get the idea. So he sets up an elaborate but incorrect straw man at the beginning of the video, and that's what he tears down in the video. So from the get-go, recognize that what he's talking about here, this is not a real person. This is a hilarious caricature that isn't true. It's dishonest, frankly, but we'll get into it. Come on.
We're buddies in high school, but don't really see each other anymore except online.
Yeah, don't know about that.
You used to argue about politics for fun when you were teenagers.
Yeah,
but
when I was teenagers.
Older, you drifted further left, and he's gone sharply right. And
What?
your arguments don't feel so frivolous anymore. And maybe you've agreed that it's better for your friendship to stop getting into it with each other. But you've just posted on Facebook about how college in America should be free and all student loans forgiven. And your friend has left a comment he's not supposed to leave. And you're not supposed...
Okay, right away. Okay, a comment you're not supposed to leave. And how are you planning to pay for that? Okay. Right away, we're screwed. College should be free and all student loans forgiven. And how are you going to pay for that? Well, it's a good question, because money does not grow on trees unless you want to crash the economy through hyperinflation. So how are you planning to pay for that? A question you should not ask. You're not supposed to ask that. You're not supposed to question this. Already we have... Okay, for a straw man, this guy... Okay, I know that the idea is he's saying that to be a bit inflammatory, but the question is valid. How are you going to pay to forgive all the student loans? Plus, have you thought of the repercussions if you pay off all the student loans? What happens to all the people who are employed in the industry that manages those loans? If you just pay off student loans, all those people lose their jobs. You know, college should be free. There are arguments to be made for and against. I don't know if I just botched that. I can't hear anything through these headphones. But, I don't know. Should college be free? Well, yes and no, but we're not here to get into that. The point is that it's perfectly valid to question, let's make things free, let's give people free money. For whatever reason. It's valid to question that. So the straw man's already, yeah.
Supposed to respond, but you really want to respond, so after a moment's hesitation, you shoot him a DM. Why do you care how we'd afford free tuition? Wars are a lot more expensive than education, but you never seem to...
All right. Why do you care? What? Go back? What? Okay.
Hesitation, you shoot him a DM. Why do you care how
Why do you care?
Wars are a lot more...
Why do you care about how we'd afford free tuition? Because someone has to pay for it, and it's not necessarily wealthy people. Tax increases that are supposed to hit the wealthy, they traditionally end up filtering down to the middle class, and the middle class is the hardest hit, and poor people, not the wealthy. So in practice, they don't work the way that they sound like they should work on paper. Next, wars are a lot more expensive than education, but you never seem to care how we pay for those. First of all, the United States hasn't been in an actual war in a long time. Second of all, how we pay for wars is not the same thing as how we pay for education. So it's sort of it's a two-coke fallacy. It's like, you can't be concerned about paying for education because you're not concerned about how we pay for wars. The two things aren't related. So, right off the bat, fallacies, just logical fallacies. Sprinkle lots of logical fallacies.
More expensive than education, but you never seem to care how we pay for those.
No. We just go into debt and you're fine with it. Debatable. Going into debt is not just wars, it's a sum of everything. The problem is that it's one thing to fund the military, which is something that's always planned for and consistent, whereas let's, make college free and pay off all the student loans. That's a big expenditure really quickly that hasn't been planned for before. And you want to add it on top of what we already pay for. So, yeah. Okay.
Anyway, aren't you the party that says
deficits don't matter? See, this is where the straw man comes in. No, not necessarily. See, this caricature, he's assuming they're Republican. I don't even know where he got that.
Deficits don't
actually.
Matter.
Yeah, but you're Democrats.
Yeah, but you're Democrats. Not an argument, but who says that? Who says any of this?
You're not going to run a deficit. You're going to raise taxes, aren't you?
You're not going to run a deficit. You're going to raise taxes. Raising taxes, it's not a one-to-one thing. So, yeah, you can't raise taxes to raise more money for the government in all cases. It works like that to some extent, but ask New York and New Jersey how well that worked when they pushed it and pushed it and pushed it, and then all the rich people got tired of paying too much. They just moved somewhere else. New York and New Jersey are literally begging the wealthiest individuals that moved out of state to come back. So raising taxes isn't, yeah.
Taxes
we're never going to get through
how
this.
Governments pay for things.
Oh, for God's sake.
Proper socialist.
Okay, no one would say this. No one's taxes are how governments pay for things, spoken like a socialist. I think you would have to find the most knuckle-dragging, Rush Limbaugh repeating, the most backwater, low IQ idiot on the right wing to get that kind of crap out of them. This is really, it's like, if you think of the bell curve, right? This guy would be really low on the bell curve, but the reason it's a bell curve is because at the end he's at, most people aren't. So his straw man would be somewhere that would be a tiny minority of idiots.
No socialist would call that socialism. Only
What?
you, and only when we pay for things you don't like.
Only when we pay for things, okay. You can kind of sort of say that?
But when we build roads or subsidize corn, well, then you just call it government.
No. Subsidized corn. I haven't met anyone that knows about the whole corn subsidy thing that that thinks it's a good idea to subsidize corn. Frankly, we grow too much of it, and it's real hard on the soil. And I think a lot of people know about that at this point. If they know enough to know about corn subsidies, they probably also know enough to know that that's stupid. But the
Those
straw
are things
man.
we can't pay for without governments, but we can pay for college ourselves.
So he sets up the straw man. We can't pay for this without governments.
We've been doing it since forever.
Well, I hate to tell you that.
Oh, dear God.
But it's not the 1950s
Let's just let it go.
Time
I
was you
can't
didn't need a
respond to
degree
everything.
to get a good job. Now you do. And you can pay for college waiting tables, but
You don't need a degree to get a good job. Most of the good jobs today, you go to trade school. Few people should be getting a degree today, so this is already just garbage. How old is it? Oh, it's just a hair under a year old. No, everyone knows trade school is the way to go at this point. No, the whole you have to go to college to get a decent job thing, that narrative's pretty much dying at this point. So this is BS. You could pay for college waiting tables, but now you can't. Tip jobs were created to keep black people from being able to make money in a way to compete with white people, and tip jobs need to be eliminated. End of story. Oh, you could pay for college waiting tables, but now you can't. So the problem is that college is bloated, and so you're advocating for pay off student loans? No, college needs to be trimmed. The bureaucracy, it's insane.
Now you can't. Nowadays, college is a necessity, and people can't afford it.
Why do liberals...
College isn't a necessity, and there are ways for people to afford it, but if you go and you don't complete it, which is what a lot of people do, I did that once, actually. Yeah. Why do liberals make excuses for people? What?
Liberals make excuses for people. If you want to go to college and don't have the money, then you study and work hard and get a scholarship.
I mean, that's an argument to be made, but, sometimes you take a student loan. But if you do your research and know what you're getting into, then that student loan is an educated guess, rather than just, oh, I was told I should do this by some adult in my school or my parents and Ian Danskin,
You earn it instead of complaining until somebody gives it to you.
Do you think people aren't
I can't respond to all of this
doing
crap.
that? Do you think there's millions of unclaimed scholarships just lying around waiting for someone to apply for them? There is nowhere near enough financial aid to get everyone to college who needs to.
Needs to go. Not correct. Once again, trade school is the way to go. These days, there's a massive shortage of people in skilled trades. So, no, this needs to go. No one needs to go to college. It's a choice, and it comes with risks and rewards. No.
Go.
That's not my problem. They can crowdfund or get
what?
a loan or whatever.
No one says crowdfund.
The government doesn't
what?
owe you an education on my dime.
Well, that's true. I mean, the government, the public, I'm not going into this. This is stupid. It's tangential anyway. It's just a straw man.
It's not going to be your dime. You don't make that much. No one's talking about raising your taxes.
But they are. They are talking about raising your taxes, because historically, when you raise the taxes on rich people, what ends up happening is the people who raise the taxes for the rich people leave nice little loopholes in for the rich people, so that then the rich people don't get affected. What ends up happening is inevitably they boil down to middle and lower class people. That's what happens. And, but, far be it from me to interject facts.
If some billionaire you'll never meet gets taxed to put some kid you'll never meet through school, why should you even...
I can't answer. I can't respond to all of these. We'll be here all night.
care?
I wanted to get to this quick.
It isn't my bank. I'm still opposed to robbery.
Well,
I have a problem with taking
true.
money someone earned to give someone a degree they aren't owed.
That's a rational argument. That makes sense. That makes us see the problem here is the straw man is actually right in this one, and this guy, this other straw man, the straw liberal that he's created, the straw liberal, if you will, thinks that college is a need and that it is required. It is not required, and so all of his arguments that are based solely on that are invalid, because it's not a requirement. It's not an actual need. Plenty of people have decent livings that they didn't have to go to college to get. College is a thing where you go into debt a lot of times, and yeah, I can't answer all these.
So why is what happens to poor people not your problem, but what happens to rich people?
Why is what happens to poor people not your problem? Okay, that's not the way that... That's not what he's talking... Yeah. Nah.
People is.
I can't respond to all
someday?
of them.
Oh, please.
Nope.
You're the one who thinks they're going to be rich.
What? What?
I assure you I do not.
What?
But then he says something that...
None
blows
of
your
that
mind.
makes any sense.
Something that
Okay.
makes you think you've been going about this the wrong way. Something that makes all the seeming contradictions of Republican thought maybe make some kind of sense. He says...
Yes, you do.
Ooh, a decoder
Democrats
ring.
think they're going to take the money from billionaires and spread it around. Give it to a bunch of poor people so they can go to college, and everyone gets a degree, and everyone gets a good job, and healthcare is free, and minimum wage is $80 an hour, and everyone's saving lots of money. So what then? Everyone's...
I mean, that... He's exaggerating, because no one thinks that $80 an hour and all that. But yeah, there
To
is
a bunch of poor people so they can go to college, and everyone gets a degree, and everyone gets a good job, and healthcare is...
See, this is the problem. All societies require stratification. You have to have people on lower and upper rungs. You have to have hierarchy. It's not possible to have a society that functions with human beings in it that isn't hierarchical, that doesn't have a top and a bottom. Because what happens when you take stuff from people that make a lot of money, for example, and you hand it to the people who don't make a lot of money, is that you pull up the people who make a lot of money, but you also pull down the people, you pull up the people who don't, you pull down the people who do. What ends up happening, I'll use the CEO example. People say CEOs of big companies shouldn't get paid as much as they do. Why not give that money to everyone else in the company and give them the same rate of pay? Well, if a CEO of a $2 million corporation makes, a CEO makes $2 million a year, and the company that they make that in has, for simple math, 10,000 employees. So 2 million divided by 10,000 is 200. That's $200 per employee per year if you took all of the CEO's pay. $200 per person per year is whatever 200 divided by 12 is, because I don't feel like doing that right now. But that's 10, 15, 16. It's like 1667. It's 1667 a month, or like $4 and some change a week. It's not even $1 a day per person. Simple math, it's not even $1 a day. $2 million from the CEO's pay to 10,000 employees, they're not even making another $1 a day. That's it just goes to show you anyone who makes that argument doesn't actually know what the hell they're talking about. But it's the same thing. This is the same thing. You can't take people at the top and give all their shit to the people at the bottom to raise up the people at the bottom. What ends up happening is that everybody ends up being kind of lower class, because the people at the top, first of all, they're taxed on income, so that's not most of what they have. Most of what they have already exists in their back pocket. To get at that, you would have to take their property from them. So most of that wealth is not directly accessible anyway. I've gone too far into this. You get the point, I hope.
And minimum wage is $80 an hour, and everyone's saving lots of money. So what then? Everyone's rich. Everyone works in tech. Everyone moves to New York and California, and nobody's a billionaire, and nobody's broke, and everyone's great at their job because all they needed was the right opportunity, and no one's better than anyone at anything.
Just such a crazy straw man.
It's a fantasy, and we shouldn't have to pay you to LARP it. I think you can make everyone the same.
Is this Steve Shive's voice?
There's always a bigger fish.
You say, did you just quote the Phantom fucking Menace at me?
Oh, dear
And he
God.
says,
I guess I did, lol.
and that's as good a time as any to drop it. But the conversation sticks with you. See, when you talk to your conservative...
I haven't watched this. Okay.
You operate as though you have the same base assumptions. Belief in democracy, do unto others, etc., etc. If you didn't believe your friend shared these assumptions, you'd basically be calling him a fascist or a sadist. And you conclude that if you believe in democracy, you must believe in equality. And if you believe in equality...
No. Not necessarily, but...
You must believe in equal access to education.
No. Okay. He's setting up another straw man here.
And must conclude.
Because democracy, you don't have to believe in equality to believe in democracy. You don't have to believe in access to education. See, it's a big jump from equality to access to education. Your access to education, okay, for example, what he's talking about is giving some people student loan debt forgiveness. So, there's just too much. It's too much. There's so much that he doesn't say that has to be torn apart. I really don't want to go into it.
That governments should help pay tuition.
Okay, so we go from democracy to governments should pay tuition. because access to education, because equality. But he doesn't ever address the fact that education is not actually a need. He assumes that education is required. It is not. Access to education and money and so on. Well, if the education isn't required for society to function, no, not necessarily. You could argue that government should pay tuition, but then most trade school, most of the jobs aren't even college jobs. Like, no, everyone doesn't need access to the same education, and that's just not how society works. There's too much to discuss on a frickin'. I don't want this to be another 4-hour stream, so let's just move on.
And so you give your friend the benefit of the doubt that if he doesn't understand this very simple logical progression,
bullshit.
He either hasn't had it properly explained.
It's not a logical progression.
They're
every step is loaded with assumptions, and I can't unpack them. I don't have the time.
Because no one could believe in all citizens are equal and always a bigger fish at the same time.
See, I wonder what he means by always a bigger fish. Like, that's the argument I made about hierarchy. There has to be hierarchy. I'm guessing, no, all citizens are not equal as in have the same stuff. All citizens are treated equally under the law. It's very different. See, equality is a very vague concept. You have to refine it with something else. And in the United States, you're guaranteed, you have the constitutional right to be treated equally under the law. That doesn't mean that the government, like, if your neighbor gets a car, like, a car is a necessity, right? Well, if your neighbor has access to a car and you don't, should the government buy you cars? You can make that argument to get the government to pay for anything. It doesn't work that way. Yes, there's always a bigger fish. Well, there's always someone at the top and always someone at the bottom, because otherwise everyone gets equalized and there's no reason to put in the work to try and get to the top. Oh, hey, wait a minute. That reminds me. Haven't we heard this somewhere before? Didn't some, countries over in, Europe and Asia, didn't they kind of try this out? This thing where people are all equal, but, if you take away that incentive to work, then, now we have to find another way to incentivize you to work. Go to your job, or we'll blow your skull out. Yeah, I seen that worked out really well, didn't it? We should totally do that.
But by this thinking, you're treating most conservatives as people who want in their hearts to be liberals, but...
What? All right, first of all, I'm not a conservative, but the definition of liberal that this guy has makes me seem like one. How can you fail to be a liberal?
Have so far failed. And maybe that's why they think liberals are condescending? What if he doesn't have the same base assumptions as you? Or
what if he doesn't?
Does, but he has other assumptions you aren't aware of that lead him to different...
Or what if you don't actually understand? What if your assumptions are based on a very, very incorrect understanding of basic concepts underlying the American way? Like, what if you just don't understand what you're talking about?
Conclusions. He is often misinformed, but what if that isn't the problem? What if he actually believes something?
Where's this straw man going?
We've been circling around this one for a while. We've talked about what liberals believe, we've talked about what fascists believe, we've talked about what nihilists believe, or rather what they don't believe, or rather why they aren't actually nihilists. But this is a tough one.
I haven't done those yet.
What do conservatives believe? Oh god, I'm going to get yelled at so much for this one. The United States, like much of the Western world, is a capitalist democracy.
Okay.
That's what we're raised in. That's what seems normal to us. And in our normal lives, democracy...
Technically, it's a representative republic. It's not a democracy. Anyone who says the United States is a democracy that isn't just saying it in extremely colloquial speech as a sort of substitute for representative republic is lying. They don't know what they're talking about.
And capitalism seem to coexist easily. Voting doesn't feel like a violation of capitalism.
What democracy?
Doesn't feel like a violation of democracy.
Democracy, all right? This is why we're a representative republic. Democracy is 3 wolves and 2 rabbits voting on what's for dinner. Yeah, the tyranny of the majority. There's a reason we don't live in a democracy, not a true one.
But sometimes they come into tension with one another.
Oh, come on.
And speaking really broadly, when a choice between them has to be made...
I don't know what a democracy is. So I'm going to try and explain to you things based on concepts I don't seem to fully understand.
A liberal is someone who tends to think democratically.
Democratically.
And a conservative is someone who tends to think like a capitalist.
This is the worst definition. This is the worst definition of either of those I've ever heard.
The operative word here is tend. Liberals are still capitalists, and conservatives still stand for democracy.
Really? No. Liberal, if we're talking classical definitions, liberal means someone who is more willing to make changes. Conservative is someone who would prefer more strongly to stick with what is known to work. That's it. This is bullshit.
And the preference for one or the other may be very slight. Nevertheless, which way a person leans reveals their priorities. The democratic framework, or at least a democratic framework, is one citizen, one vote.
Oh, Christ, here we go again. Is this going to get into the Electoral College? I bet it's going to get into the Electoral College. So, I'm making this prediction now, and in short, the president isn't voted for by the people. The president is elected by the individual states. The states send their electoral votes up, and those electoral votes are decided by the state's own internal rules that the state decides on about how to assign the electors. That's it. Let's see if that's what he does. Let's see if I just talked for no good reason. But I smell it.
No matter who you are, you are born with certain in or possibly unalienable rights, and any system that doesn't guarantee you those rights is a tyranny. Freedom, agency, and a hand in the strictures that govern you, everyone is entitled to these things.
Okay.
It's an egalitarian mindset.
Yeah?
People gain power by electoral process, i.e. when it is granted to them.
Where are you going with this, pal?
The true power resides, and
whom the Constitution guarantees the right.
Whom the Constitution guarantees the right to take that power away from an electee.
At the time
Rather
of
than
voting.
Powerful, the elected official is, in a sense, an employee with millions of bosses, all
in
of whom have
theory.
equal authority. Now, this is the idea of democracy, with the history of democracy being
Except that
riddled with failures to live up to this ideal. But part of the project of liberalism has been about making the government more closely resemble its ideology.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about this.
By contrast, is that of businesses.
This should be interesting.
Where big fish eat the little ones. If two people start businesses in the same field and one makes more profit than the other, that person can make more investments, open more locations, undercut their competitors' prices. The more money you have, the more money you can make. So advantage compounds.
Yeah, that's
even
true.
Small failures often mean getting muscled out of the field.
That can
now,
be
with
true.
Some creativity of novel.
That can be true.
Cost-saving practice or a new delivery method, the underdog can still thrive. And this is part of what conservatives like about the market, that it demands this creativity in a live ammo environment. But most will not beat the odds. That's how odd. Most
will not beat the odds. Okay. Excuse me. As someone who has had his share of business failures, that's correct. Most small businesses fail. But, oh my God, I don't even know how to refute this properly right now. Most small businesses fail, and most of the time it's because the people who ran them didn't actually do what they needed to do to plan the thing out correctly and execute it properly. Take it from someone who's made his fair share of failures in execution. I get it. You know, what he's arguing here, what he's going with this, Amazon is the only company that I can think of off the top of my head that actually presents a problem in this regard, because what happens is they reinvest all of the money that they earn back into the business, and investors keep throwing more money at them. So they basically can depress every other competing business, which is practically everyone that sells something at this point, for long periods of time. Amazon actually needs to be broken up. I'm not going to lie. There's a reason that anti-competitive, what do you call it? RICO and all that, racketeering, influence, and corrupt organizations. There's a reason that you're supposed to be able to break up large monopolies like that. Because once any entity has too much power over a certain sector of the economy, they effectively can become their own government of sorts. Amazon runs a lot of small businesses out of business, and the reason is that they monopolize everything. They artificially push the price of everything down to the point that a brick and mortar can't possibly compete, and it's ultimately bad. There are some good things about what Amazon has done, but most businesses, most big fish, aren't Amazon. And like I run a computer repair business, and I don't have a problem with Geek Squad putting me out of business, for example. So according to this guy, I shouldn't be able to do this because the big companies will keep the price. No, the funny thing is I'm cheaper than the big companies because I don't have the stupid overhead. Yeah, so it doesn't apply to every... It's stupid. I want to see where he goes with this, and I don't want to be doing this all night.
Since there will always be more failures than successes, the general trajectory of unregulated capitalism
for
is money
fuck's
pooling
sake.
into fewer and fewer hands.
No, there will always be failures because people will not do things right. Yeah, it's hard to make a business succeed. That doesn't mean that everybody should just be your business is failing? Well, the government should come in and take some money from your competitor and give it to you so that you don't fail. Well, a lot of the businesses that fail because the people who are running them are doing stupid things. Like, what was it? Those people in Australia that opened like a feminist cafe? A feminist vegan cafe that got notorious for, feminist vegan, whatever, okay? If there's a market, fine. But they did that man tax thing where they charged men like 10% more per ticket. And I don't know all the details because I don't feel like going back to it. But the bottom line is that was stupid and probably also illegal under anti-discrimination laws. So they ended up going out of business. Now, should they have been subsidized? Should the government have come in and rescued their vegan feminist cafe? People didn't want to go there anymore. That's why they went out of business. It's not a hard concept. But what he's talking about is that everybody who runs a vegan feminist cafe that charges a 10% man tax and gives females preferred seating and so on, that if the market doesn't want to pay for that, they're a small fry. They're not, a big chain restaurant. They're a small fry. They're disadvantaged, so we should help prop that up. No, people didn't want to go there after that man tax thing hit the news, and the whole thing just, no. So he set up another straw man, basically. What he's saying isn't actually in touch with the reality.
Things naturally sort themselves into a hierarchy.
They do naturally sort themselves into a hierarchy, but hierarchy isn't bad. To have any chance of getting to the top, there has to be a top. And if you cut down all the mountains so that you'll be the new peak, then there are no mountains left to climb. Congratulations, you're Scandinavia.
With sharks at the top, a million minnows at the bottom. Since we live with both of these frameworks in our mind,
for fuck's
and most
sake.
of the things we do in our day-to-day lives can be justified by
One's
either
government,
one,
one's
we don't often notice the
economy.
contradictions between them, and it's easy to imagine whichever one tends to be our default is everyone else's default
One's
as well.
government.
But issues like poverty, taxation, and
One is government, one is economy. He's describing the government and economy. They're not the same thing, dude. What the hell are you...
education are areas where the contradictions matter, and we're sometimes shocked by how different the world looks to our conservative friends. In conservative thinking, this hierarchy is humanity's natural state.
What? Name one society that doesn't have hierarchy. Name one. Even the Scandinavian countries that have a thing where once you earn past a certain amount per year, you get taxed like 80% on that money. Even those countries, they still have hierarchies. So yes, it kind of is humanity's natural state. And like I said, if there are no mountains, there's no peaks to reach. You stay, basically everywhere becomes the bottom and the top. But that means there's nothing to aspire towards. Humanity thrives on struggle. What can I say?
The American dream is here, anyone can make it.
Not
no
true.
No matter who you are or what you start with, you can become a...
Anyone can't make it. But the problem is he's interpreting this literally. It's not meant to be taken literally. Anyone can't make it, but anyone has the chance to make it. Anyone has the opportunity to try. That's what it means. And he probably knows that that's really what it means, but he's trying to interpret it in a way that's favorable to his straw men.
Billionaire. But a necessary component of this is anyone can, but everyone can't.
Well,
We're not all going to be
that's
billionaires.
true.
There's a finite amount of money.
And just bell curve. Some people just aren't intelligent. Some people aren't going to not work hard enough. But also, some people will just do the wrong thing. Some people will just run into circumstances that screw them that have nothing to do with them.
In this country, for any one person to have so much more than they need, there must mathematically be thousands of people with less.
Keep in mind, there is a difference between income, which is what can be taxed to take that money away, and assets that are already owned. We generally in this country are okay with raising taxes, or rather having people pay taxes on income. We are not okay with, you have $100,000 saved in your bank account, the government's going to come in and take 20% of that wealth out of your bank account that you already have earned and paid taxes on, and so on. So the structure is set up such that we pay taxes, and then once we've paid the taxes on the money, it's ours. We can do what we want with it. Now, granted, there are things like sales tax and so on, but the point is that the government doesn't just come and take the money you already have sitting in the bank. He's talking about haves and have-nots. He's not talking about earns and earn-nots. And this distinction, I think, is important, but he ignores it because if you conflate them, you can screw around with it and pull a double bind, where in one instance you might be talking about earnings, and in another you might be talking about what you have already, what has already been earned and taxed and is just sitting in your account or in real estate or whatever. There's a big difference between those things, and it's super important that you watch for the double binds that can come from this. Let's see what happens.
Your conservative friend is often baffled as to what you are even trying to say when you point out there's not enough high-paying jobs or affordable health plans for everyone. There's not supposed to be. The system requires an underclass. Someone's got to clean the toilets.
Kind of works.
Capitalism then is a proving ground. It's how you demonstrate where in the hierarchy you deserve to be.
See, I don't like the way he frames it. Where you deserve to be. No, I don't think that that's quite the way it works. No one specifically deserves to be in any position of the hierarchy. You know, it's where it's how high can you get. I don't know. Maybe that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Let's move on.
You have more than you need, or less. Anything you've got, you beat someone else to it. How resourceful were you? How well did you play? The field is by no means level, but any disadvantage just means you have to work harder. We know people who start with nothing.
That's not true, and a lot of the disadvantages that people run into can't be worked out of. If you're crippled, you can't work harder. Like, you're not going to work harder your way into, like, success in the construction business or whatever. You know, if you come from a poor background, there's a good chance that you're not going to have the education required to be a programmer. So to some extent, there are issues that make it hard for people to be capable of doing the work that would be needed at any given time. To that extent, yeah, maybe the government, you know, at least doing something to provide education is a good thing. But there are limits. There have to be limits. Everything must have a limit.
And win big. If you're a shark, you will make your way to the top because that's where you belong. Anyone complaining about how stacked the deck is against them is making excuses for not being better at the game. So disadvantage itself is not a problem so long as it's quote-unquote natural.
He's talking about this sort of notion of pure, organic capitalism that doesn't exist in the real world. Capitalism doesn't work in its purest form. Some degree of socialism has to be overlapped on top of it. Capitalism requires some degree of regulation, or it basically becomes monarchy or oligarchy, except by corporations, instead of by kings, you know.
What's necessary is that advantage and disadvantage not be imposed from without. Free tuition, a high minimum wage, taxes on the wealthy, or any other kind of government meddling, these things must be opposed.
Well, there's actually, go back to that. Free tuition, expensive. Problem is, the tuition, there has to be a limit. There's not an infinite amount of money. You can't just print money. So free tuition, well, how far does that go? And once the tuition is free, how much more bloat will be introduced into the system to get more of that sweet, sweet free tax revenue dollar money stuff? A high minimum wage. A high minimum wage. Minimum wage also is based in racism, by the way. But a high minimum wage... A minimum wage is a wage floor. It means that if your work is worth to an employer, a potential employer, if your work is worth below that floor, you're not allowed to work. I know a lady who literally has a severed arm, and I mentioned this in another video a long time ago about the minimum wage. She has a severed arm, and I literally, like, she took the thing off, and I saw her arm bones separate. It was, oof. Disabled. Can't do much. She said she'd be happy stuffing envelopes for $2 an hour because it would give her something to do, and she could make a little bit of extra money. The government's minimum wage prevents her from working at all. So what happens with minimum wage is basically you say if you're not worth at least this much, you don't get to work. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to magically get a job and get paid that wage. It means that if you can't make that much, you just don't get to work at all. So rather than like two people making $7 an hour, you know, that whole that equality crap you're talking about, now it's like, oh, well, we'll have to replace them with one person being paid $15 an hour, and the other person just gets to be at zero. What do they do? Unemployment? Oh, wait, that costs money. We have to raise some taxes, pay for that, or charge the employer. Oh, price of goods went up. Yeah, minimum wage is bullshit, and provably so. You already know now. Taxes on the wealthy, they filter down to the bottom. Yes, I understand that some taxes on the wealthy work, but in general, most of the stuff that the wealthy have is already in owned assets, not in income. You tax their income, you can only do that to a certain point. You're not going to go and take $1 million out of Bill Gates' bank account. It's just not going to happen. And that's where the money goes, and it stays there, and, you know, it could go overseas or whatever. But, yeah, we got to move on. This is getting really long.
High minimum wage, taxes on the wealthy, or any other kind of government
I hope nobody's in the chat, because I'm not actually looking at it right now. I'm sorry.
Meddling, these things must be opposed, because with them, people would end up in the wrong places.
What?
Power has to be earned.
Oh, please.
If it isn't earned, it won't be properly wielded, and then society ends up a mess. Conservatives generally feel...
You don't want the person who opened a feminist vegan cafe that charges a man tax and has segregated seating options to be the person who runs the biggest company in the world. Like, you don't want Amazon to be headed by someone who thinks it's a good idea to do something that there either isn't a market for or that's outright illegal. No, so yeah, okay. Yeah, that there is a problem with that. There's a problem with, you know, expecting the sanitation worker to be good at performing accounting stuff. Just
what's wrong with the world today can be chalked up to people not being where they should be in the social order.
Should be. See, he uses all these words like should be, like you belong here, you belong here. Now, the beauty of the system is that you can work to go to a different place in the social order. You don't belong anywhere. You end up where you choose to try to go and where you manage to acquire the skills and so on needed to do it. But he makes out like there's this belonging, like you're required to go here. Like we're living in fucking Brave New World. You know, take some Soma, dude.
They used to be where they belonged, but then liberals gummed everything up with their government handouts and forced representation.
No one's making that argument.
It was a bit of a moving target. Nowadays, they act like it was the 80s. In the 80s, it was the 50s.
What?
And in the 50s, it was sometime before the New Deal. So following the nostalgia cycle, it's usually about 30 years ago. Conservatives are distrustful of any effort to make society more equal.
Oh,
because
come on.
deep down, they don't believe equal societies are real.
Well, everyone can't be equal. If everyone is equal, then no one can achieve anything. I mean, equal opportunity versus equal outcome. That's what's not being mentioned.
Obviously, all citizens created equal needs to be the government's position.
Yeah.
Because you can't trust the
No.
government.
All citizens created equal is a concept in a founding document, but the actual law, the Constitution, says that everyone is to be treated equally under the law. That's different from all citizens are created equal.
To know where to put people, so it has to treat everyone the same. But this is a legal fiction, like corporate personhood.
Okay, where are you going with
It
this?
just means the government leaves the market alone, so the hierarchy can reveal itself. You're
Capitalism doesn't work without some regulation.
not supposed
So
to
no.
believe in an equal distribution of power. What are you, 7? This is just the way the world is. Look at alpha wolves, silverbacks.
What?
Consider the lobster.
Oh, come on.
You are one single individual within a system, and it is your job to rise or fall within it on the sweat of your own back. You don't change the system. Society's problems come.
You can't change the system as an individual. Just to be clear, you cannot live a life and be remotely successful in that life with the notion that you can change the system. You have to work within whatever the system is. There's simply no way to avoid working within the system. So whatever the system is, yeah, you do have to move through it. You have to understand the rules of the system, and you have to navigate the system based on what you understand about it, how well you know the rules, and so on. Yeah. Oh, what are you advocating for, dude? No system?
From the rules being too weakly enforced. The answer is always more discipline. Your conservative
It's not always more discipline, but in a lot of cases it is.
friend thinks you're naive for thinking the system even can be changed, and
It can be changed, but change is notoriously slow. Notoriously slow, as anyone who watched, say, Obama's presidency play out understands. That whole recession thing. Yeah, the recession thing happened at the beginning. We were just kind of coming out of it at the end of his whole presidency. It took that long for change to happen. Yeah, changes are not quick. And a lot happens in 8 years of your life. 8 years is a good chunk of your life. You're not going to make a meaningful change to the system within that 8 years that you can count on. You have to play within the system.
is the charitable interpretation. Many conservatives assume liberals, at least the smart liberals, know that the hierarchy is eternal, that there will always be people at the top and people at the bottom. So any claim towards making things equal must be a Trojan horse for something that benefits.
Remember, you can't make things equal in the first place. That's not possible. No one can be forced to be equal. And like I said, this left bit, this is government, and the right bit is everything else.
Them.
He's conflating things like hell.
Because that's what they do.
Oh, wait. Fighting sex trafficking equals persecuting sex workers. Yeah, sex trafficking, there's a lot of bullshit about it because they conflate legitimate prostitutes into it, and they say that if someone's a prostitute, they must be trafficked. So there's a lot of fudging that goes on to make that issue seem even worse than it really is. So yeah, I don't want to get into that, but there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, sleight of hand with sex trafficking information and statistics and reporting. They count some stuff that it's like a bad survey, basically. Protecting IP equals ending net neutrality. Pacification. I don't think I should even bother responding to this. This is some snarky crap he put in the middle, but I mean, to some extent, these things are right, and to some extent, they're not. But let's not go into it right now.
The real liberal agenda is to put people in the wrong places on purpose. Boost liberal allies, hold back liberal opposition. You don't want to break up the pyramid.
What?
You're just trying to sneak someone else to the top.
What?
A lot of conservative contradictions start to make sense through this lens of any issue. Simply...
Okay, no, is he trying to talk about the diversity quota sort of thing? Because, okay, if if you're black, because this is the example that people like to use, if you're black and you get hired to work somewhere, not because you were better than the white guy that was also applying, but because you were black and they needed to fill a quota, isn't that kind of wrong? Isn't that a little offensive that you're a token hire? That you weren't hired because you're good. You're hired because you had the right color of skin. You're hired because of your race. You're valuable because of what you look like that you cannot change, not because of the skills you have. The diversity quota crap doesn't make any sense. And he's pussyfooting around it, but this is what he's talking about. You can see because he stuck a black guy with a rainbow heart and whatever ear thing up here at the top. You know, like, why aren't there more gay, transgender, black CEOs or something? That's where we're going with this. But, you know, you don't hire CEOs based on this. If you want that to be a thing, what you need to do is get those people to where they get what they need. Now, like, here's a good thing. Remember the college thing? Okay, screw college. A lot of the problem is that people who grow up in poor backgrounds, in bad neighborhoods, in, you know, inner city schools or whatever, a lot of those people grow up in environments where they can't learn effectively, where the education that they're supposed to be getting doesn't stick, where it's toxic to their education in the earlier years. Fix that problem before you worry about paying for college. Make it so that the young black man in Chicago, on the bad side of Chicago, that wants to learn but can't because he's being bullied all the time or has to worry about being shot in the ass by another black person, because that goes on a lot in Chicago, and it's so routine you don't hear about it. It's not newsworthy. But, you know, he's worried about getting the crap beat out of him on a daily basis. And, yeah, I think you get the point. You know, fix early education before you worry about paying for everyone to go to college. Because that would make a far bigger impact than paying for everyone to go to college. You know, make it so that people have an equal educational absorption. Why don't you get that right first?
Ask, does this distribute power or consolidate it?
What?
If power flows up the hierarchy, they're for it. If it flows down, they're against it. How can conservatives say 15 an hour is
I think the problem is he sees everything as a power struggle. Everything is not a power struggle.
too much for flipping burgers, but somehow 11.5 million an hour isn't too much to run Amazon?
15 an hour is too much for flipping burgers because the cost of burgers will go up, and at some point, I'm just going to pack a lunch.
Because if you're flipping burgers, you're a minnow, and you don't need 15 an hour to be a minnow. But sharks?
Flipping burgers is an easy-to-learn job that almost anyone can do. It is not, there's no such thing as a low-skill job, but the skills to do flipping burgers, the quintessential low-end job, the skills required are easily learned by people who do not have the highest intelligence and so on. You don't have to work very hard to be able to cook a hamburger on a grill at McDonald's. You just don't. You know, I've cooked hamburgers, trust me. Whereas being the CEO of a multinational corporation, that's a very highly specialized skill set. You can't compare the two and be like, well, this guy is this and that guy is that, but they should be the same. Or even remotely anything like that.
They deserve all they can get because they know what to do with it. They use it to give us Amazon. Don't you want?
I hate Amazon. I use it from time to time, but I still don't like it.
Amazon? We keep assuming conservatives defend the rich because they think they'll be rich someday. And
some do.
Sure, they would love to be, but it's more nuanced than that. They defend the rich because they believe the rest of us need the rich.
We kind of do.
We'd be lost without them. There should be no shame in being beneath the rich, not if the right people are rich. No shame.
Did you see it? Donald Trump was at the top of the pyramid this time?
aim in being a cog in the machine so long as the machine produces something beautiful. There is a real fear that everyone filling their prescribed role is the only thing keeping us from complete and total, not the fun kind, of anarchy. There is honor in being in your place and doing your best with it.
I don't think there's a problem with that to some extent. Like, do the best with what you have. What's wrong with that? And the problem is he's conflating, doing the best with what you have with, don't try to go up the hierarchy. Don't try to better yourself. It's weird. It's like he lives in a world that doesn't exist.
Most especially if your place isn't at the very bottom. The thing about hierarchies is they're self-similar on many scales. If you're in the middle, then you serve the king, Valor But to everyone beneath you, you are the king. You've got a
surround yourself with losers so that you can be their king.
Good job and a good wage, that gives you some power over people who don't. And getting pissed at those above implies that those below have a right to be pissed at you.
Is he saying that everyone in the middle class is Karen? Because that's kind of funny.
And there's a real anxiety that liberals want to make room for those people in the middle by putting conservatives at the bottom, and that those people will treat conservatives the way conservatives treated them.
Okay, wait a minute. All right. There is a well-known trend of people who don't ascribe to the right think on the internet pissing off radical left-wingers and getting their employers harassed until they lose their jobs. So when you say this like it's absurd, to some extent it's true because of people on your side doing it. Yeah, it's a weak argument, I know, but
freedom, respect, and empathy are looked on as finite resources.
I don't think any of this is true. He doesn't live in the same world as us. That's the problem, is that he makes a lot of statements that, how do you refute them when they're based on incorrect assumptions in the first place? There's too much falsehood underlying it to just unpack it all quickly. Look, it's midnight here. I've been doing this for way too long.
Market, just like jobs and scholarships. Also, most conservatives are white men.
Are they?
And so are most billionaires.
Huh.
So, but for the wealth,
so it's racism.
Common,
it's all racism.
To empathize with billionaires and who feel.
Why does he feel the need to bring that up? Why does he feel the need to bring it up? Because race, and it's a bunch of white men feeling loyalty to other white men because they're white and they're men. Because that's how things work, right? That's how things work. Couldn't be anything else.
Powered by seeing people like oneself do so well.
This notion that you need to see other people that look like you in any capacity, it's just bullshit. I have yet to see anything anywhere that proves that this notion of representation, somehow being effective in any way. It's just, I've seen nothing.
And white men at the top.
I don't accept
in ways
it.
That serve people like them.
Yeah, white men at the top. Okay, bullshit. Because women have the right to vote. Okay, people who aren't landowners have the right to vote. Women have the right to vote. Brown and black people have the right to vote. Hang on a sec. Congestion. So those policies were put in place by who? Oh, white men at the top? Oh, yeah. Why did white men at the top vote for women to get the vote? Oh, because the women were nagging them? No, not at all. I mean, you could argue that, but the vast majority of women didn't want the right to vote, especially because the implication was it would come with the draft. White men at the top gave women the right to vote without putting the same draft requirement on them that came with men that was supposed to be part of that. So yeah, no, the argument that the people on top are going to vote, that they're going to enact policy in a self-serving manner, does not play out in reality. At least not universally. Now, granted, there are a few that do, but one only needs to look at the history of voting rights in the United States to see that that's bullshit. People often, like gay marriage, like the people who voted in gay marriage, the majority of them probably weren't gay people. So where's this like exclusive self-serving interest that you're bullshitting about? Bullshit premise. Absolute bullshit premise.
Which materially benefits white men in the middle. The well-being of the white billionaire becomes a metonym for the well-being of all white men. A slight on them is a slight on all of us. White men want to believe that these billionaires earned.
So when you assume that people are all of the same race and or gender, are this collective group that on a mass scale are somehow working together, who's the racist and the sexist now? But I'd say it's you, bud, because that's not how it works. If I see another white man, I don't identify with him because he's white and a man. I don't care that he's white and a man. He could be a total asshole. If I met him, if I actually talked to him in person or whatever, I might hate that guy. So no, that's not how it works.
Their station.
Unless you're a racist. Unless you're a racist that likes to conflate, that likes to take people of the same groups and assume that they all have the same characteristics and then judge them negatively based on it.
Not that their gender or race got them preferential treatment, because that would imply their own treatment may have also been biased in their favor, and maybe it's not the liberals giving people power they don't deserve. No matter.
So we kind of strayed from the points that he was making earlier, didn't we? What was he saying earlier? He was saying he had that little conversation, always a bigger fish. Da, 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 da. See, what is he getting at? Because he's talking about all this stuff. Where is he really going?
Earning one's place. They have always in the back of their mind an image of what society should look like, and any discrepancy between imagination and observation must mean foul play.
That's no, that's projection. That's what you are doing. You who seek equality of outcome, that's what you are doing. A discrepancy between what you think society should look like, equal representation in the outcomes, otherwise something is clearly racist or sexist. Yeah, you're projecting, Ian. You're projecting very hard. You are guilty of what you're accusing other people of being guilty of doing.
This feminist is too respected. This black superhero is too popular.
Okay, nobody said that. Nobody said that. All right, that's that weird he for she thing that Emma Watson did. And the black superhero is too popular. The movie wasn't that good. It was a mediocre movie, and there was a lot of pandering, preachy nonsense in it. It just wasn't a good movie. It had MacGuffins and crap. No, don't give me that crap.
Can't be because they're worthy. Someone must have put their hand on the scales. Someone got a freebie or
Someone made a shitty movie, but it wasn't that shitty. It was still a superhero movie with well-drawn action scenes. So people were still able to enjoy it despite it being a shitty movie. So the people who are saying it's a shitty movie, they're racist. They're racist. Race card.
The race card or faked a scandal. This means even though they claim the hierarchy is natural, what they will or won't accept as legitimate is a gut feeling. If they like what they see, they take credit for it.
What?
If they don't, it's the left's fault. What does it say about them that they see a bunch of white male sharks and think, yeah, that's authentic? The innate authenticity of wealth and power is the starting.
The vast... yeah, that... You're in a majority white country, you're going to see... Even if everything was equal, you'd still see, 60-something percent... I think 60 something percent, maybe 70 white people at the top if everything was equal. So that you're still talking about, most of them being white, and men, and that's because men have more representation at the extreme ends of the bell curve. It's pretty easily explained if you actually know what you're talking about, or aren't being disingenuous or, playing fast and loose with the facts.
Point. Okay, bear with me. When they open the door to Kingdom Hearts, and on the other side there's Mickey with his shirt off, and you're like,
no.
Why would Mickey with his shirt off be on the other side of that door? And the answer is, I don't know, we'll figure it out in 7 games. Rich people believing it's good for everyone that I'm rich is the starting assumption.
Is that what rich people believe? And who gives a shit what rich people believe? All the rich people that I've ever read about say, yes, please, tax me a little more. I mean, like, at a certain point, it's like, no. But when they're like, oh, yeah, I make plenty of money that, Bill Gates is like, I'll pay more taxes. I don't know.
That's Mickey with his shirt
But does this
off.
matter? Okay, what the? This just got weird.
Games where they make up reasons why that might be true after the fact. It's a retcon. This hierarchy, starting assumption that rich people believing
it's good for everyone that I'm rich is the starting assumption.
Good for everyone that I'm rich is the starting assumption. That's Mickey with
doesn't
his shirt
make any
off.
sense.
And conservatism is the pile of games where they make up reasons why that might be true after the fact.
Make up reasons why rich people think that. No, dude. What are you even going for? I mean, I think I kind of get what you're trying to go for. You're trying to say that it's an unnatural situation, but they try to rationalize a way to make it seem like it comes about naturally after the fact. And I already explained it, so fuck you.
It's a retcon. This hierarchy is not democratic. It's birthed by sleep of fragmentary passage. Savvy
I never played that game, I don't know.
Another political philosophy that is hierarchical, undemocratic, built on nostalgia, and that likes to...
Okay, generics. Say we've got these vague concepts that we're going to use. We're going to take this thing that has a lot of specific nonsense, like specifics, and then we're going to generalize them out a bit so we can transform it into a different thing. So hierarchical, undemocratic, built on nostalgia, and likes to cloak its policies in progressive camouflage.
Cloak its policies in progressive camouflage.
All right.
And that's the one from 2 videos ago. Fascism.
Ha! Fascism.
Now,
Wait. Okay. Fascism. Do you know what fascism means? Huh.
I am not
Let's find
calling
out.
conservatives fascists. There are distinctions. Under fascism, the hierarchy is much, much less meritocratic, and
Under fascism, you get fucking killed.
the nostalgia is much, much older. However, conservative thinking is, at the very least, one that fascism maps more cleanly onto. Fascists appeal to this hierarchical mindset by portraying...
If you make things sound vague enough, you can remap them onto anything else.
all of history as struggles between...
It's like humans breathe oxygen, and dogs breathe oxygen, so humans are an awful lot like dogs. Yeah, they're both mammals, but there are a lot of things that are different, so... Logical fallacy, anyone?
between ethnic groups over who gets to be where. Someone's got to be at the bottom, white man. We'll make sure it isn't you.
What?
You'll find throughout history that fascist movements, though they often pick up dissidents from all over the political spectrum, the third position, for instance, is fascism for anti-capitalists. When they find purchase in a political party, it's pretty much always the conservative party.
Oh, is
Look at
that
France,
true?
Look at Brazil, look at here. Whether you want to interpret that as conservatism being unique...
They always find it in conservatives? Really? That's interesting. So I guess, yeah, that old Soviet Union thing didn't happen.
susceptible to fascists, or diet fascism being another name for conservatism.
Oh, dear God.
Fascism, and to an extent libertarianism, are roided up extrapolations of the hierarchical mindset, in the same way that socialism and anarchy are extrapolations of the egalitarian one.
Just make
We
shit
can
up
see
all day
conservatism as a kind
long.
of compromise between fascism and democracy.
What?
And liberalism as a kind of compromise between capitalism and socialism. They are two
What?
different attempts to solve the tensions
No!
between these ways of
That's
thinking
not what those
without
words
giving either
mean.
one up. You could just as easily
That's
claim
not
that
what those
liberalism
words-
is watered down, ineffectual
God
socialism.
almighty.
A lot of the left would balk at that, but not me, pinko scum that I am.
No.
The most important thing to understand is that you cannot communicate with nor anticipate the behaviors of a conservative if you don't understand what they believe, which is hard because
Because all people that you label conservative think the same way. That's...
they're often in denial. You will never
Denial
convince them
of
to
what?
compromise on any attempt to break up the hierarchy, because even incremental change strikes them as revolutionary, and they feel they've made too many concessions already.
Well, manipulating the markets? Yeah, okay. So you want to pay off all the student loan debt. That's breaking up the hierarchy. It's going to take tons of... tons of things are going to go out of business. The currency's going to get devalued madly because you have to print enough money to pay it. Yeah, there's a bit more going on than just breaking up the hierarchy. You're talking about uprooting the entire system and collapsing huge chunks of it, This is the problem with all of his videos, with all of these straw men he makes, with all of the logical fallacies that he spits out. Every time I see one of these videos, I notice that he'll say something like that, just some quick thing Like,
you will never
convince them to compromise on any attempt to break up the hierarchy.
Because...
But the problem is when he says that, what does it mean in practice? Well, take it back to the student loan thing he was talking about, which is exactly the attempt to break up the hierarchy, and it will cause an unmitigated economic disaster. It's not breaking up the hierarchy. It's taking a wrecking ball to the economy. It's completely trashing the place. It's like taking a sledgehammer to your entire house inside and going, oh, you know, it's fine because, you know, we broke up this nice, you know, this orderly thing that we have that is working. So this is conservative versus liberal. The liberal, if you're a liberal person, classical liberalism, you're more willing to take up that sledgehammer, knock down that wall, and put up a new one and hope that when you put it up, it looks better. If you're a conservative, you're like, well, that wall's fine. There's nothing wrong with that wall. There's no reason specifically to take the wall down. Let's leave it up and not mess with what works. That's conservative versus liberal in a nutshell. What he's talking about here is taking a wrecking ball to the fucking house. Totally different. Like, no, this is radical liberalism at best. And the problem is that it basically leads to anarchy because the whole fucking system will collapse. Congestion. It's like a Jenga tower. You can move blocks around all you want, and that's not the best analogy, but you can move blocks, and the tower won't collapse. It'll teeter, but it won't collapse. But if you just smack the tower, it's gonna fall down. You can't make a huge change like that. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm going in circles. You understand what I'm talking about.
Even incremental change strikes them as revolutionary.
This is his formula. That every video, he sets up a straw man, he makes up a bunch of bullshit, spews a bunch of logical fallacies, and tries to rationalize away the radical change that he's in favor of, that he's in denial about, that would cause very real problems, that would fucking ruin everything.
And they feel they've made too many concessions already. You will never get them of their own free will to agree to government regulation because the government, as a democrat...
I can't remember if it's 3 or 5, but I think it's called 5 felonies a day, maybe 3 felonies a day. There's a book called that explains to you how every day you're committing federal felonies. We are in a regulatory environment where technically every American is guilty of a federal felony at some point during their day that they don't even realize. So you'll have to forgive me if I laugh a little bit at your notion that more regulation is something that should be accepted. We should be cutting regulation. We should be cleaning it up and streamlining it, not adding more on. It's a Jenga tower again. It's just stacking up, and something has to be done. Just not adding more. You don't pile more on when the foundation's already shaky. The regulation really needs to be pulled back, streamlined, cleaned up, and representative of modern concerns. But you don't get that way by just piling more on. You don't blindly accept more regulation. So no, yeah, there's a problem with more regulation. Yeah, we don't want more government regulation. None of us. Nobody who is libertarian or, well, I guess conservative, but ultimately libertarian, we believe in being able to conduct our own lives as we see fit, not having the government make those decisions for us. Regulation means the government makes decisions for us. So yeah, there's a problem with that. And yes, some regulation is necessary, unless you're a crazy-ass radical libertarian, but I'm not, and most people aren't. So yeah, regulation, screw it. Fix what's there. Fix what you have. Don't add more.
Democratic institution is inherently unnatural. If you don't like what a business is doing, you don't regulate it. You take your money elsewhere.
Well, that's true. That's true, but sometimes there is no elsewhere. But the reason that we're in that kind of situation now is because regulation. More regulation makes it harder for competitors to break into a market. That's why YouTube, Google, Facebook, Twitter, all those humongous tech corporations, they fucking love when Congress wants to put in all these laws regulating their industries, because the more regulation you put in, the easier it's going to be for them. That shit in the EU with the copyright, what is it, Article 11 or something? I can't remember the numbers, it's Article something, but the copyright law in the EU that was going to require advanced filtration of uploads, yeah, YouTube's already got a system for that. YouTube built the Content ID system. It's not perfect, but they already have it. They have the resources to do it. Twitter and Facebook have the money and resources to do it. Joe Schmo, who has, you know, 2 people helping him build his startup website, doesn't have the resources to do it. Who's he going to have to, you know, go to get that regulatory compliance? Oh, his competitors that already have those systems, because he can't put them in place as effectively. Yeah, so regulation fucks the free market in all kinds of interesting ways. And often regulation favors the big established players that have lots of resources. So if you're going to pretend to be for the little guy, you're not going to give me this shit where you're like, oh, you can just take your money somewhere else, and regulation, you know, you should accept more regulation. No, fuck you. I don't accept your premises, and your regulation is bullshit, because your regulation causes a lot of the problems that you claim to be trying to solve with it.
Not the democratic one. Also, when you vote with your dollar...
Capitalist and democratic are not mutually exclusive and are not opposites.
People with more dollars get more votes. They will never be on board with...
That's not true. If you get a coffee at a Starbucks, as they showed, you get a coffee at a Starbucks, and some rich guy gets a coffee at a Starbucks. He has more dollars, but does he get more votes? Is he fucking buying 100 cups of coffee, you disingenuous fuck?
Aiding the poor in any systemic way, and will instead champion charity and crowdfunding, because minnows getting to eat should always be framed as a gift rather than a right.
So, eating. See, he brought it back to eating.
With aiding the poor in any systemic way, and will instead champion charity and crowdfunding, because
we can't actually solve a lot of the problems with people going hungry, so, you know, I get it, but he's conflating people being able to eat with people getting a $15 an hour minimum wage. But he's doing it indirectly. He separates it enough that you don't put those together by yourself if you just watch the videos and go, yeah, that's cool. I'm all about this bread tube shit, man.
Should always be framed as a gift rather than a right. You may get individual conservatives to come around on some of these, but as a body, they will never consent to any of it.
As a big group of millions of people that totally act pretty much the same way, because that's how humanity works. Except it's not.
Unless they can work it to their advantage,
what?
Or if you have let...
People do act in their own self-interest. It is normal and healthy to act in your own self-interest. Don't act otherwise. You should actually put yourself above everyone else as far as, you know, you need to take care of you before you take care of anyone else, before you can take care of anyone else. So don't give me any shit about, you know, people, you know, working it to their advantage. Well, yeah, of course, people are going to do that. That's part of the reason that the system we have works, even though it's all messed up. It's because people are going to work it to their advantage. And, you know, under the systems that existed that we fought world wars to get rid of, people would, you know, from each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. Well, what happened is people just wouldn't fucking work. So then they tied, you know, what you got to your work, but it wasn't the normal pay thing. It was more of a, like, you know, we'll lock you up if you don't do something. It's pretty fucked. I mean, I'm getting off topic, really.
Leverage over them. They will sign on when denying progressivism costs them something, because few things terrify them more than slipping down the hierarchy.
You become more liberal when you become more poor. I don't think that's true. I think that when you become more poor, you become more desperate, and you don't really give a shit about politics. You give a shit about being able to feed your family.
And what's insidious is that most of us have this thinking ingrained in our own minds as well, myself included. We're all raised in the same culture. This is why they're able to control the conversation, because they can, with some priming, get us thinking in their terms.
That's exactly what he's doing with every one of his videos. That whole straw man thing at the beginning is priming to get you thinking in his terms. All of these Innuendo Studios videos are projection.
A nice upshot is our thinking is also ingrained in their minds, though they're a little bit better at fighting it. But as long as you're trying to meet this mentality in the middle, you are leaving the door open for fascists. Conservatives.
So he creates a dichotomy that doesn't exist, and then he says, if you give, then fascism.
Is and always will be vulnerable to them. A good defense against fascism is to consciously, intentionally, think and act in democratic terms.
No. That's not how societies are built. That's not how humans function properly together. You're gonna fight tens of thousands of years of evolution? No, it's not gonna happen. And there is a place for democratic rule in some instances, but you're conflating things. It's just so much bullshit here. Oh my God. It's like my brain is going to explode just trying to fathom how he thought this was a good idea. Like, you don't think and act in democratic terms. You can't do that. Okay. Imagine if everybody at your job was equal and no one was the boss. What do you do if something goes wrong? Well, someone has to step up and deal with it. But you're not allowed to step up and deal with it because everybody has to make the decision. Everybody has to be a part of it because this is democratic. It's fundamentally fucking stupid. I don't know what else to say. It's stupid. It's so out of touch with the way that the world works.
Because, newsflash, we're not actually lobsters.
Yeah.
Neither of these systems...
He's taking a dig at Jordan Peterson there because he said something about... Yeah.
...is natural. They are choices we can make. I recommend this one because...
Hierarchy is natural for humans.
Egalitarian thinking is one thing Nazi...
In fact, hierarchy is how human civilization came to be. When we split up into hierarchies and... we created societies that way. It's just like, when everyone's equal, then they're all fucking killing each other and starving. But when you work together, someone's got to coordinate all that. Someone has to be responsible. Yeah, hierarchy is how you're able to sit in your cushy little apartment and make these videos instead of being out there chasing animals with spears and hoping that other humans don't kill you.
Are bad at infiltrating. If you want to fight fascism, move left.
See? Move left. Okay, if you want to fight fascism, move left. But by left, he doesn't mean classical liberalism. He means his way. Think like me. Radical left. Very different. And I love how he makes fascism and conservatism the same thing, but he doesn't say so. It's like, oh, I've gotten out because I don't actually say that. You can't catch me because I didn't say that, but I'm using them just as just swappable terms, like they're the same thing. And he's like, conservatism isn't fascism. I'm not saying that. Except that's what you're doing. You're using fascism and conservatism interchangeably in your video. So you're lying when you say that. Oh, it's the end of the video? Thank fucking God. Move left. Let's go read the comments. Let's see. Bold from you to assume I had friends in high school. It's dumb shit. Usually with the Innuendo Studios videos, you get a bunch of masturbation in the comment section, intellectual masturbation, where they all go, "Oh, I'm so glad that that I think like you." So go to newest first, and you'll find that there are people who actually disagree. Yeah, here's someone who says, "I'm calling conservative projection, blah blah." Yep. Let's see. Is there anything interesting in here? This is long, and I don't know what he's saying. Yeah. I can't read 14,000 comments either, so... Let's see. Let me quote everything in the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. That's Mussolini, who is the quintessential fascist dictator. Please explain how Republicans or libertarians fighting for smaller government and businesses not regulated by it can be fascist in this regard. Holy shit, dude. That's actually pretty great. I like it. Oh, I should have just read the comment section for this video. That's pretty good. Smaller governments are easier for the dictator to directly control. Well, you just showing that you have no idea what you're talking about, because the smaller government isn't necessarily easier for the dictator to directly control. If anything, there's a more direct connection between them, and he has to actually put more effort into controlling more people, because as the government shrinks, you need less and less layers of abstraction. So, yeah, go watch CGP Gray's video. What's it called? Rules for Rulers is what it's called, and it describes how dictatorships have to work to not, basically get hosed. Oh, fuck. I can't read through all this, and it's 12:30 in the frickin' morning. I've been doing this for God knows how long. So that's basically it. Projection, logical fallacies, and conflations up the ass. He doesn't really know what he's talking about, and it's pretty obvious. But 847,000 views since almost a year ago. So, and 42,000 upvotes. I'm going to add my downvote because you know how I feel. But you get the idea. There's a bunch of people that agree with him, but he doesn't fucking know what he's talking about. And it's basically just ideological circle jerking, in the clothing of intellectualism. And I think that's a good note to end this stream on, because that basically is all there is to it. Ideological circle jerking cloaked as intellectualism. Good night.